Hello friends and followers, hope you had a great weekend. This is the 17th episode of Out There channel, a regular episode I mean. I have other episodes like news bits and specials. So 17th of April 2017 or 2017. Today I'm going to be talking about some research I've been doing in Viktor Schauberger and a possible connection to the ghost rocket phenomenon that happened in Scandinavia region. First of all, an overview of Viktor Schauberger. He died when he was 73 and he lived during World War II era, and we'll be going over why he's so famous before we look at the UFO side of things. He was Austrian, not Australian, and was quite a respected name in Sweden. Here are a series of photos of the water stuff he worked on and also the water projects. He managed to get logs to float down with hardly any water, where the logs actually weighed heavier than the actual water could support. Having searched the internet and read all the different things, all I can say is there's a lot of information there about him and everybody's talking about the same stories, but there's no actual factual evidence to support it other than his work in the forestry industry and using water to transport logs. He was pretty much known as the master of water. He had some strange ideas about water being more than just two elements, hydrogen and oxygen. He had this term called living water, where I suppose in a way he's talking about the atomic level of water and the electrical side of things, or the electrical properties water has, and the temperature, how it affects water. As you know, it has various states that goes from liquid, solid and gas, and also what are the best temperatures for using water and mixing it with a certain amount of oxygen and minerals. So he had some interesting ideas, but he was basing it on what he observed in nature and wanted to apply science and to creating vortexes and tapping into energy using natural processes to try and complement with nature rather than a force against nature. So he discovered implosion technology, whereas what the rest of the world were doing was explosion, like a propeller blade into the air. He wanted to use implosion, which was a natural process of sucking in the air and causing a vortex or vacuum in front of the object which sucked it forward, which he observed through watching trout apparently, and stories of boulders falling into water and popping up back to the surface instead of staying at the bottom, which I'll cover more of that in a minute. So what were the key things he found? First of all was this bending the pipe in a certain way that it actually had less resistance travelling down the pipe as you get surface water tension, and he found it seemed to go faster than what was being put in. Maybe some electrical properties to it. Also he found that when it spiraled, it formed the same patterns as a spiraling galaxy and replicated nature, but also it seemed to form a spiraling together pattern, almost like a helix of DNA. He also noticed how rocks shaped more like an egg-shaped boulder, when it fell into a stream, would come back to the surface and almost jump up in the air, while other ones simply just sank to the bottom and didn't come back up. So he thought the egg shape was perfect harmony with water, that it repelled and also was good for storing it in an egg-shaped container. According to this article here, he was forced to work on cooling systems and air turbines for planes using his principles when Germany invaded Austria and the SS were going to force him into a mental hospital for the rest of his life unless he helped them out. This talks about 1940 to 1945, where he was working on the repulsion A and B turbines. Now, what are these? Reading that post there, they talk about the US government after World War II took all the documents on his designs and also the prototype models. So a vortex in air would be like a tornado, where it has incredible power and suction uplifting effect. And he wanted to duplicate that using his special spirals and spinning around the object on a stand. Apparently get up to a certain RPM and it shot up and went straight through the garage roof. It's one of the stories. Here's what the prototype looked like. Not sure if it was US photographs. And also here's the object with parts missing. I'm not too sure when the bits were lost. And he's also got a Model B, which has also got some parts missing, which people are now experimenting with because they have got it back from the US government to experiment with. And apparently some people have done their own sort of design based on his ideas and claim it lifted upwards. But the problem I see with it is it's spinning around on a stand and it actually hasn't got any motor or anything to keep it going. But I see on the diagram that it's kind of got legs and a motor underneath it. So this is only like a prototype, I guess, to prove the principle. And also it talks about ionic effect, where it's got electron flow through the water, through the vortex. As you can see, there's quite a lot of mathematics and calculations to it all, and making the parts precisely. And I think that was half the problem, was manufacturing the parts to make the vortex, which I probably can do now with 3D printing perhaps. Looks like there's two research groups. One's trying to create free energy for the home based on his vortex ideas of implosion, and the other group are trying to create lift for craft. Here are some diagrams showing a more conventional flying saucer, showing the vortex currents within the craft with the push-pull effect of the implosion causing the suction above the craft to be lifted up into the atmosphere. So I guess it only works in atmosphere. What happens when it gets to outer space? I guess they have to use ion energies from that point onwards. But it's still interesting. And here it talks about how it had to be anchored down when they were experimenting with it. And this leads us now into the German Nazi clock, which means the bell. And here's a picture of it chained down, like the previous person was saying about the test one. But this one apparently uses mercury instead, and the vortex that it created an electrical field around the device instead, and it lifted it up. But that's only stories, of course. Now the following is just my theory. When I got to this part in the research of submarines and also air jet engines, I looked at the shape, and to me it looked like the classic Ghost Rockets of Sweden. Considering they were big on his research, someone may have carried it on after World War II, as you'll read further on when I go over the Ghost Rockets. All of those were sighted, mainly 2,000 of them in 1946, which is straight after World War II had ended. Here are two photographs of ghost rockets that I could find, and they both have that sort of white vapor trail around them. And if you look at the patent or designs, his creates a vortex spinning around the outside of the craft and a suction in front of it that sucks it forward, which you'd expect to see a vapor trail all around it like a tornado. So that's what made me do a comparison there. So what do you think of that idea? Do you agree with me that it could be related to his designs? You may notice it has the same egg-shaped design to his torpedoes and submarine devices and jet engines. And also here's an article here where the Swedish Army was secretly investigating it and released more information after declassifying it. They really thought there was only 300 sightings, but there's actually a couple of thousand. At first they thought they might be missiles or meteorites, but there had been reports of eyewitnesses seeing them do 180-degree turns, and a lot of them crashed into lakes. Well, maybe all of them did, but there's possibly the speed it was going, it could have ploughed into the ground like one of those bunker bombs that the Americans have. So they might not have found any parts of these test rockets or whatever they are to prove if they're man-made or from outer space. As you can see, they were looking in the lakes as well to try and see if they could find the fragments. I looked into radio controlled, and it's been around for a long time, starting with mechanical devices, but Tesla was the first one to do it radio. And back in the 1940s wartime, they actually had long-range radio controlled. So it's possible it could have been the first prototype of a radio controlled missile, and using Viktor's designs for propulsion. And of course it ended in 1946, means they may have abandoned the project. But I did find another case here from Lee Spiegel that talked about a couple that were looking in the lake in the 1980s, sighting they had there in the 80s. Whether it's the same as the other ghost rockets, I don't know. It could have been just another UFO craft. Well, hopefully I didn't explode your mind or implode it. It was quite technical there and lots of details to go over, but I hope you liked my theory that maybe Viktor Schauberger designs may have been the result of the ghost rocket phenomenon that occurred in 1946. So hope you enjoyed it, and hit the like button on the way out, and maybe subscribe if you're not a member, and also send it across all your social networks will help me out, and also the channel, and get the episode watched by more people that are interested in the UFO field.